What's up guys, my name is Ace, and with yesterday's big weapon balancing update, we saw a pretty decent nerf to the Grau 556. And for those of you guys that haven't been paying attention to Warzone lately, the Grau 556 before this update had definitely risen to the top. This was the #1 gun that anybody that was going for any sort of kill records or anything was using. And at least in my lobbies, it seemed like the vast majority of players were using the Grau 556 before this update. And this was due to many factors. I've analyzed this in the past. I've done versus videos against the M4 and the Kilo 141, for instance. However, now that it's received these nerfs, I wanted to answer the question, is the Grau 556 still on top in Warzone? So today, we're going to have a good look at this, and this is kind of going to be like one of the episodes of my Versus series, but not quite as in-depth as my normal Versus series. This is more so just designed to answer the question, is it still going to be that top 1 meta gun after this mid-season update? So I decided to compare this up against the M4, which was always its closest competition, I feel, within Warzone. However, I also wanted to throw the Kilo 141 in there because it's very similar to the Kilo in a lot of ways. And in both of these cases, the M4 and the Kilo didn't get touched at all with this update, whereas the Grau got nerfed, and therefore the gap between these has closed at least a little bit. So let's get into some of the raw killing potential numbers here. First up, rate of fire. I've got these listed in order. The M4 is clearly the fastest by a pretty good margin. Then the Kilo is kind of right in the middle. And then after that, the slowest is going to be the Grau. When it comes to damage, all of these are the same, except at mid-range, the Kilo does 23 damage, whereas the other two deal 22 damage. And normally, in regular core modes, this wouldn't really have much of an impact. However, in Warzone, within that damage range, if the enemy has exactly 2 or 3 armor plates on top of their full health, you actually kill in 1 less bullet within those ranges with the Kilo 141. So while that doesn't affect every situation you run into, it's definitely a little bit of a leg up for the Kilo over the other two. Now, when it comes to DPS, once again, the M4 has the best DPS, followed by the Kilo, and then finally the Grau is the worst of these three. Then looking at time to kill, assuming the enemy has no armor, it's no surprise here, the M4 kills fastest, then the Kilo 141, and then finally the Grau. And then I also wanted to have a look at the time to kill with full health as well as 3 armor plates, and we see a similar trend. M4 is the fastest, followed by the Kilo, followed by the Grau. Now, none of this really comes as a surprise. This is exactly how it was pre-patch, with the exception being at that mid-range damage. The Grau used to be the same as the Kilo at that 23 damage, but that has now been dropped down to 22. But overall, what I'm trying to show here is when it comes to raw killing potential, the Grau is actually not as good as the Kilo or the M4A1. Obviously, this raw killing potential isn't everything though, because despite the fact that the Grau has never killed faster than the other two, it still rose to the top in Warzone before this patch. So let's have a look at the next really important stat for Warzone. This is our damage ranges. And first, I did want to show you what it looked like pre-patch, and you can definitely see why people really like the Grau pre-patch, because its ranges were quite a bit better than the M4 and the Kilo 141. Especially when you started adding the barrels that increase your ranges, like the Archangel, for instance. You got a pretty massive range boost. But now I'm going to fade into the post-patch values for ranges, and as you can see here, it's now in between the M4 and the Kilo. The Kilo is better in the range department than the Grau now. I should also point out the ranges might look a little bit different in this video compared to yesterday's patch video. This was due to a mistake that I made in yesterday's video with the 5-shot kill range. I had a little bit of a typo in my notes, and that ended up making it into my video, unfortunately. Just know that these are the actual accurate values post-patch. The 5-shot kill range is actually quite a bit shorter than I showed you guys yesterday. But you can see one of the biggest advantages that the Grau had over these other two guns pre-patch, it's basically gone. And this brings us to the next thing I wanted to look at, and this is what these guns handle like when you have the longest barrels equipped. Because in Warzone, you typically will see people going towards the longest barrels for each of the assault rifles. So to keep things nice and fair, instead of comparing the base versions of these guns, I feel like it makes more sense to compare this when you have the longest barrel equipped. So first up, I'm going to show the damage ranges there in numerical format. And again, you can see that the Grau with the Archangel barrel is now right in between the M4 and the Kilo with their longest barrels. As for our aim down sight speed with these barrels equipped, the M4 with the Grenadier is actually the fastest at 284 milliseconds, and then the Kilo and the Grau with their longest barrels are equal at 300 milliseconds. So the M4's got the advantage here. And then finally, when it comes to movement speed, this is where the Grau still comes out on top. It has a great movement speed over the other assault rifles, and even though these long barrels decrease our movement speed for all of these guns, you still get a pretty respectable movement speed with the Grau and Archangel barrel. Now, this does leave us with one last extremely important stat for Warzone, and again, this is another one of those things that really push the Grau to the top of the list. This is your accuracy, or how much recoil the guns have. And with this, again, to keep a fair comparison, I wanted to use the exact same attachments, and I wanted to use an attachment combination that would be relatively common to see in Warzone. Some people switch it up a little bit from here, but just know that with all of these recoil tests, I used the exact same attachments on all three of these guns. And taking a look at it here, with the M4A1, we get a nice straight up vertical recoil at first, and then it starts to veer to the right a little bit. With the Grau, it's almost straight up, very little side-to-side bounce. It does go slightly to the left, and then it curves a bit to the right, but not nearly to the same extent as the M4A1. And then finally, we have the Kilo, which has a very low magnitude of total recoil. It doesn't kick upwards very much, but it does kick a little bit on the strong side to the left, and that can be interesting to compensate for. Some people have no problem with it, but for me, for instance, I don't like recoil patterns that lean to the left, for instance, but for some people, that's no problem for them at all. But in all, I did want to point out that out of these three recoil patterns, in my opinion at least, the Grau is still the best. It's got the least amount of total horizontal deflection, there is very little side-to-side bounce in this, and you basically just have to pull straight down on your aim to counteract that recoil. Whereas with the M4 and the Kilo, it requires a bit more horizontal adjustment to compensate. To take this one step further, I did want to go back to yesterday's video where I did a recoil comparison with the Grau plus the Archangel barrel, both pre-patch and post-patch. Keep in mind with this recoil test, I am only using the Grau plus the Archangel barrel. There's no other attachments like the Commando foregrip, which cuts down on that side-to-side bounce. So that's why you're seeing a slightly different recoil pattern here compared to the last one we just looked at. And as you can see, it's not really that much different. It's about the same pre-patch versus post-patch. And therefore, when it comes to recoil, even though this does come down to preference to some extent, I still feel the Grau comes out on top. So, bringing all of these stats together and taking a look at these three guns, is the Grau still clearly the best out of these three? For me, I would say at least the lines have been blurred a lot more. The Grau is still an excellent gun to use in Warzone, and I wouldn't hesitate using it at all if it's something that you really like and you've really gotten used to using. However, for those people that just use this habitually and you haven't tried out some of the other guns like the M4 or the Kilo since this mid-season update, I strongly encourage you to give them a go because you might find that you'll end up liking them better than the Grau. On top of this, I do anticipate more sniper rifles showing up in Warzone over time because now the Grau doesn't have that ridiculous 5-shot kill range that it used to have. And I think that was one of the reasons that, in my lobbies at least, sniper rifles were kind of fading away because really good players could just laser you with a crazy 5-shot kill range in a Grau. Whereas now, it's going to take them an extra few bullets, assuming you have armor on as well, and that's going to make sniper rifles quite a bit more valuable. At the end of the day, though, if you are looking for that extremely accurate and easy to control gun with an excellent iron sight on it, the Grau with the Archangel barrel is probably still on top. Just know, though, it's going to be noticeably worse now than it was before this update, and you're likely to run into many situations where you'd be much better off using something like the M4 or the Kilo 141. Additionally, going outside of these three guns, I just want to tell you guys again, try the FAL out in Warzone if you haven't already yet. Especially at close to mid-range, I think you're going to be very pleasantly surprised. That thing has a ridiculous time to kill, and the Grau doesn't stand a chance against it up close, assuming both players are roughly equally skilled. So yeah, that pretty much covers it for today's video with the stats, as well as my opinion based on those stats and my experience with these guns. And this is where I'd like to hear from you guys. After seeing these numbers, and after experiencing a little bit of gameplay after the update, do you still feel the Grau is on top when it comes to Warzone? Or do you feel like it's been dethroned and one of the other guns is better? Or are you one of those people that really didn't think the Grau was that amazing pre-patch anyway? Just let me know those thoughts in the comment section down below. Now, I know a lot of you guys are really excited for the gun guide on the new sniper rifle. I am hard at work on that in the background here. It just takes several days to get a gun guide together normally. And this one's quite unique, so it's going to take even longer. So be patient. I should have that gun guide up for you maybe tomorrow, but more likely on Friday. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.